Welcome to Module 4 for LIBR 104 Public Services for Library Technicians. Let's get going. Your first assignment in Module 4 is to read Chapter 10 in your textbook on Programs and Services. This is recommended reading, and there are no review questions due for this particular chapter, but I would highly encourage you to read it. There's a lot of great information in that chapter about various programs and services in different types of libraries. For any of you who have been working in libraries or go to libraries, you are probably well aware that most libraries offer some kind of special programs or services. These are usually based on institutional missions and goals, and they can be different depending on the different types of libraries. So let's say in a university library there might be more emphasis on say instructional services, for instance. Public libraries might have certainly would have more children's programs than a university library would, for instance. So a lot of that will depend on the type of library that you're in. There are different types of services and programs that can be generally categorized as you see on the slide. So educational types of programs like literacy programs, English as a second language or English language learning, homework assistance, that sort of thing. And then of course you'll have more recreational types of things, which are still educational since it's still a library, but things like summer reading and book clubs and that sort of thing, games, board games, that kind of thing. You'll see that in different types of libraries, both public and universities, especially undergraduate libraries in colleges and universities. I see a lot of emphasis on letting students know that the library is a friendly place, so they'll offer a lot more what we would consider recreational types of programs these days. And then you have outreach. In a public library, Bookmobile would be an example of an outreach. Somewhere you're somehow going beyond the library's walls to let people know about the sorts of resources and services you have. In universities, there's again a lot of emphasis on outreach these days. So you might, for instance, offer reference services in a dormitory or in the dining hall, some way to get the librarians out into the community, whatever the community is. And so there's that's examples of some outreach possibilities. Programs and services have been a part of every single library job I've ever had. Sometimes it was a big part, sometimes I was only peripherally involved, but in almost every library there are either opportunities or requirements to do these kinds of things. This is, again, a possible area for you if you find that you enjoy creating programs and services, or maybe you're really good at administering those, you're good at the organizational aspects of it. This is an area of library work where if you are good at it and you enjoy it, you can really turn that into something valuable to your library. So what I would encourage you to read through the textbook, at least skim it and see if there are things that you think are really interesting. And every library always wants new and engaging programs and services for their patrons. So special programs and services usually require funding of some sort, which brings us to the first assignment in Module 4, which is the mock grant application. This is a very pared down version of a grant application. In a in a usual grant application, you would have to do things like a budget and a timeline, and you'd have a section about administrative capacity and those sorts of things. But those are outside the scope of this module, so we're going to really just concentrate on a specific project that you come up with, define the target audience and the various outcomes. So feel free to pause the recording now and go and look at the application that you have to fill out and have that in front of you if you'd like. And we're back. So you need to choose what type of library you want to write this from. You know, public, a special library, a law library, you know, obviously a university library, whatever you'd like. You will need to figure out the amount that you want to request, and what you're going to want to do is choose a specific project that speaks to a specific community need. First of all, let's back up. I want you to be sure that you read this assignment all the way through very carefully more than once. There are a lot of details in there that you should find helpful in completing this assignment. Once you are sure that you understand what the assignment is really asking, and look at the grant application that you have to fill out, if you have any questions about anything, please email me well ahead of the due date and we'll get that figured out for you. So once you've chosen the type of library and what your project or community need is, you will need to define your target audience. So for instance, in the example, the target audience is the non-English as a first language people. So English as a second language or English language learners. That's the example that you've been given. And in fact, once you've got that target audience and you've identified a need that particular part of your community has, that's when you can really start coming up with exactly what kind of project you want this to be. So some of the examples in the actual assignment that I've given you are things like, you have a large immigrant community. What are the kinds of things that the library could offer them? Or maybe you have a large unemployed constituency in your library. What can you come up with some kind of project that would fit within the grant that you can create and then ask for money for? So again, back to the example, we've got our English language learners at a university, so it's a university library, English language learners and international students, and the project is that we are going to build a specific collection for that student. So that's our project, that's our target audience, and then the next thing you have to do is create two different outcomes, that things you're going to achieve with this project or program or whatever it is. So for instance, my first outcome for our example or sample on the actual application is develop a library collection responsive to the needs of English language learners and international students at the university. So that's the outcome. That's what I'm going to achieve. We're going to develop a library collection responsive to the needs of this particular group of students. Once you have an outcome, and you need to do two of these, but we'll just do one as an example, you need to think, well, how am I going to evaluate that? So your outcome you have to be able to evaluate your outcome in some way. Now in this particular instance, we could examine the circulation statistics to determine if the collection is being used. So that would evaluate whether or not we've been successful in developing a collection that's responsive to the needs of these students. We could also survey specifically those international students and faculty for that matter, to determine if their needs are being met. So that's another possible evaluation that we could do. So we could look at circulation statistics, or we could do a survey, or we could do both. And then you also need to put on your application a specific method that you are going to use to achieve your outcome. So our outcome is developing a library collection, and the method that we're going to use to achieve the outcome is pretty straightforward. We're going to purchase English language learning materials that are relevant to the coursework of this part of the student body, and which appeal to the students. And that's the method. So obviously that seems pretty straightforward, right? We're going to purchase materials. So you have to think about that. You have to have an outcome in mind. So what are you hoping to achieve? Then you have to tell me how you're going to evaluate whether or not you achieved that. And you also have to tell me the method by which you are going to achieve the outcome. All right, so if you have any questions about that, and you have to do 2 outcomes and 1 evaluation of each outcome and 1 method for each outcome. Hopefully that's clear as mud. If you have any questions about what that is going to look like, look at the grant application, because I think it's pretty clear. But if you're still not sure, please email me and we'll figure that out. And then the next step is you need to create a list of 8 to 10 items that you would purchase for your project. So when you come up with this project or program, it can be whatever you want. If you want to do a book discussion group for a specific part of the community, you could do that. So the project would be, we're going to create this great group, this great book group for these reasons, and this is the community need it's going to fill, this is the target audience, whatever that is, and we need funds to purchase books for the book group. And then you're going to tell me about the various titles. And it needs to be, because I'm presenting this to you as something that you're not going to just get, right? You have to convince someone that your project is the project that they should fund. So instead of just generally a book group to get together and talk, think about how you can make that special. Like, let's say you're a teen librarian and you want to do a teen book group based around graphic novels. That's something a little bit more interesting. So be specific. You need to come up with a reason for doing what you're doing, a need that you're fulfilling, and how you're going to fulfill it. And then you need to tell me specifics about it. What outcomes are you hoping to achieve? How are you going to evaluate whether or not you've achieved those outcomes? And also the method that you're going to use to achieve that outcome. All right, I'm going to stop talking to keep the slide under 10 minutes, but please do let me know if you have any questions about this assignment. Okay, the next assignment in Module 4 is the Assistive Technology Site Visit. So you're going to visit a library of your choice, and there are specific questions in the assignment that you need to ask. I would suggest, first of all, that you try to find someone at the management level of the library, simply because it's possible that a random person at the desk that you talk to may not have a whole lot of knowledge about what assistive technologies are available. Now, you could argue that they really ought to, but I really don't want an assignment that basically says, well, I asked these questions and nobody knew the answer. You're going to have to, if you want to go up to the person at the desk, that's fine, but if the person at the desk doesn't know, you need to find someone who does. And with these site visits, I would encourage you to contact someone specifically, contact a specific person at the library and make an appointment to go and talk to that person. So try to find someone who's going to know a bit about this particular topic. The questions that are in the assignment, you don't have to stop there. If you have other questions of your own, please do ask those. The assignment is to interview someone, ask those questions. You're going to summarize the findings, and then you're going to give a list of 3 to 4 suggested improvements, specifically for assistive technology in that library. It's pretty straightforward. I think the hardest part is going to be finding the right person to talk to. So my advice, shoot an email out to somebody in management and ask, tell them you're a student, you're doing an assignment. If you could talk to someone who knows a little bit about what's offered at the library for assistive technology, that would be great. That's just a word of advice. As always, if you have any questions about this or any other assignment, please do contact me before the due date and we will try and get things cleared up for you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.